Hi, I'm Lauren, a mom, former teacher turned children's book author, and your host who joins special guests each episode as we share our top kid-lit picks for sparking hard conversations the easy way. Yep, that means everything from tackling bullying and out of control anger to celebrating diversity, inclusion, and leading with kindness, plus so much more. My whole mission of my own children's book series, Blooming Rose, is to provide social and emotional support tools for in and out of the classroom, and this podcast is my way to expand that mission even further. So stay tuned as we dive into this week's topic on the Blooming Books podcast. Hello, and welcome to season 2 of the Blooming Books podcast. Our special guest today is a fellow author I've been following and low-key stalking for a couple years now because she's always doing amazing and inspiring things, including being an advocate and now indie publisher to help get more diverse books out into the mainstream. So Danielle Marietta, thank you and welcome for the podcast again.
Thank you so much for having me. Again, I'm excited.
Again,
always.
I mean, you are our first double guest, but that's also because my worst podcast nightmare came true and we recorded last week this whole amazing episode, and Zoom decided that I did not press all the right buttons to record it. So we are back, and you graciously agreed to scratch that and redo it. And I think we're going to be back and better than ever because I felt like the first one went by so fast and I had like another question or two that was lingering. So we kind of revamped it a little bit and we're ready to dive in again. So are you ready?
I'm so excited.
All right. We're going to discuss your books in a minute, but can you tell us when you realized you wanted to be an author and your path to publication?
Yeah, for sure. So honestly, I've always been writing. I studied journalism in college. So I majored in broadcast journalism. So I was doing a lot more like news writing and was constantly being told, that I needed to take myself out of things. And then I was like, well, why am I not doing creative writing? What was I doing? So then honestly, just kind of stopped, graduated college, then had some kids, and then started reading children's books and was like, oh, this is fun. Like there's so much adventure and kids are so open to reading anything or hearing anything. And it's like, oh, let me try writing books kind of for my kids, and then seeing, some more diverse books for them, and they can have characters that kind of look like them and I can have fun writing it. So honestly, that's what started the actual path to becoming an author. And I put it on my vision board that I wanted to do it. And then, a few months later, 2020 COVID hit, and it was like, well, you have zero excuses now. So that's honestly how becoming an author started. And right before I published, I had actually read somewhere that if you're going to publish at least 3 books, that it is beneficial to start a publishing company or to start like your own LLC. So even if it's for just you, it can be beneficial that way. They said, if you're only going to do 1 or 2, maybe not so much, but if you're going to do a few, why not? So I did, and then just started doing, more social media, and then people would ask me questions, and then I started author coaching, and then people said, well, would you publish my book? And I said, okay. And then now everything is just under Books and Things Publishing, which is that publishing company that I started right before my first book. So long story short.
Okay, first, as always, let's lighten the mood by getting to know you a little bit better with some rapid fire questions. So, number 1, in honor of your Instagram series called Pages and Pours, where you have authors come on for a sip and chat, what are you sipping on or wish you were sipping on since it is, like midday?
Right now, I'm
anything fun.
Some high quality H2O right now. But on Pages and Pours, my new favorite go-to is a Paloma, but it's one that my husband makes because Palomas typically have grapefruit juice, and I don't like grapefruit at all, but he uses the sparkling grapefruit juice, like seltzer version. And that then turns it into juice, and then I like it. So that's going to be my go-to, is a sparkling Paloma.
It makes it that bougie factor that, you feel like you're actually fancy.
For sure. I love to bougify anything. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Is that a word?
I mean, yeah, put it in your next book. We got it. It's good.
Done and done.
Number 2, what is on your TBR or to be read list? I know you're a big reader as well.
Yes, I do love some books. And this one, okay, I have another few. So I have You Had Me at Ola, which has been on my TBR for like 2-3 years. And then because I'm weird, I'm like, oh, it's romantic. I'll read it in February. And then February comes and goes. And I'm like, I guess I'll read it next February. So I feel like I should just read this one. And then this one is The Build Up by Tati Richardson, who's really, I found her on TikTok and then just started hearing all these awesome things about her book and was like, adds to cart.
Yeah. I mean, TikTok book talk is just like insane for what it's doing for independent and self-published authors.
It really is.
So
it's
there's
crazy.
hope. There's hope for any of us,
Right.
Number 3, what is your favorite holiday or season? And we'll do a spoiler to that in a little bit on why, but what is your go-to answer?
For sure. Well, I will say, so my favorite season is fall. I love sweater weather. I love fall. I'm here for the colors and the vibes, but my favorite holiday, hardcore Christmas girl over here. I decorate now if my husband would allow it. But yeah, I'm going to be a big time Christmas girly.
My husband is a hard stop on all things Christmas until the day after Thanksgiving.
Mine
Like, we
too.
will literally have like the Christmas tree waiting outside the door because he does not allow anything Christmas
Yep.
before Thanksgiving. But we do love fall and all the pumpkin things. But Christmas is just so exciting.
You only get to keep them up for like 3-4 weeks. And I'm like, no, because once you take them down, the house looks naked. And
Well,
I'm
that
like,
is my caveat, is that if I don't get to put it up until the last day of November, then it's staying up pretty much through January.
I'm not mad
And
at that.
sometimes, we're from Louisiana, so I'll just take off some of the red accents and just throw in some like purple, green, and gold, and call it a Mardi Gras tree. So, I mean,
Nailed it.
he can't hate on it, right?
I love it.
Okay, so this week's topic is one that I think is so pivotal to expose and discuss with our kids. I really do think this next generation can come from a much healthier place of not only acceptance, but appreciation for those around us that are different from us, particularly because of the great books I see coming out and the focus on SEL we're seeing in homes and schools. As a former classroom teacher, it was important for me to see each one of my students' beautiful faces represented in my books, and more importantly, for them to see themselves. But to be honest, I was weary of coming off as representing or telling a story about something I'm not. That was until I heard the term casual representation, which is simply displaying and representing characters of all races and abilities within your stories without having the story being centered around those differences. So I not only think it's important for all children to see and connect to characters similar to them, but for all children to see and relate to characters that are different from them as well, but connecting on a kid to kid level, which oftentimes has nothing to do with their race, gender, or abilities. So is that a term you've heard of, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yes. So I love casual representation, and I'm glad that there is even a term for it because I was pushing for that with all of my books, honestly, and didn't know what to call it at first, and then started hearing more casual representation. I'm like, yes, that's what I want. I mean, honestly, I'm biracial. I'm mixed. I have a white mom and a black dad, and that already puts me in kind of this weird place, honestly, where it's like, to maybe fellow Black authors, writers, people, I'm not Black enough. Then to my white family, who I'm even closest with, they're like, why are you going so hardcore Black? That's like, oh my gosh, you guys, this is just me doing my thing. And I think that's what I've tried to put out in my books. For example, The Holiday After, it's a Black Santa and the family is Black, but I'm mixed. Again, my husband is Black. Therefore, now we have 3 Black children. And that's just what we see. And this gives us a way to kind of be without it being about us being Black, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there are so many books out there too, where you find diverse authors and it's them talking about them being Black, them being this, their skin is so Black. My Black is beautiful. My hair, I love my hair. I love my this, which are fantastic and absolutely needed. But a space that I felt was important to kind of tap into was that it's just a book and the characters happen to be Black. We don't need to address it. I don't need to write that anywhere in the text. It's a picture book. You guys can see it.
Yeah.
You can see what it is. So that to me was super important. And I love seeing that in more SEL books too. Like, I want my daughter to read a book about bullies and, or read a book about how to handle their emotions or how to handle their feelings. And the characters just happen to be Black. It doesn't have to be about them being a thing. They can just see themselves in it. And so I'm hoping that that's kind of where we're going with more casual representation. But yes, I have heard of that term, and I'm a fan of it. I'm here for
Yeah,
it.
me too. I guess when it gets a little blurry is when you have like a white author that's trying to write about a Black experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, portraying what I would imagine you feel like, and all that kind of stuff. It's like, I'm not going to put myself in your shoes, but, but for our series, Blooming Rose, I have Rose, who's the main character, who's based off of my daughter and her likeness. But then her best friend, one, I wanted him to be a boy because I didn't want Blooming Rose to be too pigeonholed into like this super girly thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to balance that out. And then I also, wanted to balance out their whole classroom. There's a scene of the whole classroom where you have kids that are all different shades, all different genders, all different abilities even. I have a little boy, I think it's a boy in there that has, a prosthetic leg, which my
Mm-hmm.
kids think is like so cool. And you just see him there doing the competition like everybody else, and it doesn't have to be about, them in every scene, but really, like I was saying, like just connecting on that kid to kid level, like, oh yeah, he did awesome. I want
Yeah.
to do that too, kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. And I think the more that we, especially as adults, show kids that's more the reaction to it, that then they don't act weird when they are
Mhm.
around someone that's different from them. Because it's
Right.
like you see it said in your book, it's, if you then end up having a class with a kid with a prosthetic, you've already seen in your book that happens and it's no big
Yeah.
deal. It's just what it is. So,
Yeah, I did a podcast episode last season on celebrating inclusion, and it was focused more on different abilities. And like I
mhm,
told them, I said, it's not to make light of anybody's situation or put ourselves in anybody else's shoes, but it's almost like, I try to point those things out to my kids, like in a casual way. If we
mhm,
see somebody in a wheelchair, or I'm like, hey, they're in a wheelchair, they, need a wheelchair to help them walk. Like, end of
mhm.
story. It's honestly none of our business why they're in a wheelchair, you know? And
Yep,
my kid's like, oh, okay, cool. Or they'll see a kid with a prosthetic leg and be like, oh, that's awesome. He's got this robot leg, and they just think, okay, cool. And they go on about their day. And so, not to
yep,
say that it's like no big deal, um, but to them, their reaction can be like, oh, yeah, cool. Seen it. Been there, done that. Like,
yep.
next, like what is the point? What's the real story here?
Yes.
Um, so, like you were saying, I love that my kids and especially my students, when I was a teacher, just exposing them to anybody and everybody that they're going to see in real life and,
Mhm.
putting the human emotion behind that person, not just to be about their differences, but like, okay, well, how are they feeling? How can I be kind? How can I be friendly? How can I, be helpful?
Yeah. Yeah, for
So,
sure.
not to go too far down that rabbit hole, because now we have the flip side. You do want authentic authors that have, lived different experiences or raising children who are living those experiences and speaking their unique stories, be a powerful tool as well. So I know your publishing company's mission is to help encourage diverse authors who write the story, to tell their story. What are some statistics when it comes to the amount of minority authors we have being published independently and traditionally? And why do you think it's so important for them to also stand up and share their stories?
So there's a lot. There's a lot of issues with kind of the statistics of it and the non-equalityness of it, right?
Yeah.
So, which I think is why we see so many, honestly, Black authors specifically going through the self-publishing route, because in the publishing world, there's only, what is it, like 12% of books that actually have children leading characters, that are Black, but then only 9% of those books are even written by Black authors, which again, to kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier, it's hard when you do have folks that want to write those stories but might not fall under those categories, because a lot of times I think their hearts and minds are in the right place, and it's not that we don't want them to do that. It's just that we want them to allow the other writers that are willing and want to write them to kind of be showcased, right?
Right.
Like, it's not like, don't do it, you can't do it. It's just that, hey, open up the doors and let's, kind of even out this playing field. But that's all going to trickle down from the top of the publishing industry, where, you have the agents who are looking for authors, and that's not very diverse. And then you have, the editors, and you have the actual publishers themselves. And so it's just kind of all coming from the top down. And that goes too with male, female. That goes with, abilities and disabilities and genders and things like that. So the whole system is just a hot mess. But I am loving all of the self-publishing authors that are really coming out and really like pushing hard and kind of making noise, right? Making change. And I think that's going to force the traditional publishing route to make some adjustments too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, I'm sure anyone can DM you or myself about traditional publishing and how it is not all that it's cracked up to be. Even if you do get a
Right.
traditional deal, which is extremely competitive and it's probably not gonna work, in your favor, unless you're that one-off random, big hit kind of thing. So
Exactly.
I know I'm in a very little slice of, Bookstagram world where I see so many people getting out there and self-publishing or doing independent publishing. I do a hybrid publishing, um, and really kind of taking their own reins to say, hey, this is my story. I'm going to get it out there. And I think you're seeing lots and more stories coming out, especially over the next few years. There's a lot of authors that say they started with the pandemic. So hopefully
There really are.
2020, yes. Hopefully
Which I'm
2020
wondering
kinda
if
kicked everybody in the butt and, we got some
it really
good stuff
did. I
coming.
think it took away any of the excuses that we had before, right? For me,
Yeah,
it was funds. The cost of illustrations are expensive. And then when I realized, hey, I'm not paying for daycare, I can take my daycare funds and pay my illustrator. And so, yeah, it definitely did that. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens in the next couple of years too. Like if numbers start to slow down again with even who's self-publishing, because people's lives have kind of gotten back
yeah,
to, maybe somewhat close to what it was pre-pandemic. So that'll be interesting.
yeah. So, I know a lot of first-time authors start with this story idea in their head, but aren't really sure where to go from there. So since you are a publishing pro, what are some tips or points of reference you have for someone who has that itch to want to share their story, but might be overwhelmed, intimidated, or, lack the confidence on where to start? So what's kind of the first thing you would ask them on their journey?
So, kind of the biggest tip that I give to folks, especially if they're still stuck even in the writing phase of it, and starting to self-doubt and imposter syndrome and all that, is to just write, like word vomit it all out,
Mhm.
get all the words out. It can sound like horrible, but get it all out there, because your book doesn't really start to become a book until it's in edits.
Yeah,
So that's when you can start then getting the feedback of other people. You can start to hear it more clearly and figure out what your actual vision is, what you actually want to say. And a lot of times too, you might scrap a lot of it in edits, but it could take a turn and open up, a new thought a thought wave, a thought process, um, and take you down a completely other route. But the other thing I tell folks is, do your research, but then make a decision, because you can drown in the research of
yeah,
self-publishing. Like there's so much information and there's so many different ways to do anything. And there's really not a right or wrong way. There might be a way that's better for you or better for me or whatever. But the beautiful thing too with self-publishing is that you control it. So if you make a mistake, you can put a pause on it and do it the other way, and learn from it. So I tell folks to write everything and do the research and then make a decision. So those are my tips.
yeah, that's good.
Okay, let's chat about some of your books. So you are a five-time author now. One of my favorites of yours would have to be The Holiday After, which tells what happens the day after Christmas. So hint, hint that Christmas is, our fave around here. After he's brought joy to the world, how does Santa himself and his family celebrate? It's not only one of my kids' favorites, but it gives them a little something to look forward to the day after everything winds down. The Christmas hangover is real. And I love that they see your characters simply as cool characters, even though they don't look just like them or like the quote unquote, traditional Santa. So, what do you hope has been the response when kiddos first read and fall in love with this book?
I honestly just hope that it kind of ignites that magic in the holidays. I think that's one of the things I love the most about Christmas is the magic of it, keeping the spirit alive. And as you know, because we both have kindergartners as our youngest,
Mhm.
I'm starting to be like, oh my gosh, how many
I
more
know.
years do I have of this innocence, that I can keep this alive? And so I feel like through books and why I like reading seasonal books and Christmas books are a tradition in a lot of families. The
Yeah.
Polar Express, twas the night before Christmas or was the night before Christmas. I hope that The Holiday After becomes one of those kind of traditional books that, even years after kids are grown, maybe they're teenagers, nobody wants to be hanging out. It's Christmas Eve, and your parents are like, nope, every Christmas Eve we read The Holiday After, and then I make pancakes the next morning. I just want it to be one of those traditions that, will bring back that magic for that moment, that spirit for the moment, and help that whole holiday warm, cozy vibe for a whole family, no
Yeah.
matter how old your littles are.
We definitely do. My daughter, yeah, makes us make pancakes now the next day after Christmas. So she's like, "We
Yay.
have to do the holiday after." I'm like, "You're right. Let's get to it." But it's
I
just a nice time to kind of, just chill out as a family and kind of decompress and, have breakfast and, maybe recollect on, what was a busy season for sure.
yeah, I agree.
So you have four other books as well, including your first early chapter reader, The Truth Tales, The Air Fair He. So
Yes.
what were your inspirations on branching out from picture books into this middle grade novel?
Great question, because this one honestly wasn't even my idea. So I was doing a live on Instagram celebrating The Holiday After when it came out. And the woman who I was speaking with was talking about how she always wanted to write a book and whatever. And she had a pretty big platform. So I was like, let me reach out to her after and see
Yeah.
what her idea was and if she would want to kind of co-author it and do it together. And she mentioned her idea and I was like, oh my gosh, I actually really like this tooth fairy idea. And basically it's this story of a boy who's getting older and he loses a tooth and travels with the tooth fairy. So it's really funny too. Some of the things that she told me initially, and I was like, hard no, that cannot be in the book. Absolutely not.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it definitely it morphed into a combination of both the two of us. I'll tell you one thing. So in the airfare, there's the whirlpool of wisdom, which is also what it was almost called. But the whirlpool of wisdom is basically, right, the kid is trying to figure out what happens to the teeth after the tooth fairy takes them. So, and in her version, what she told her children, and I'm not sure how they never had nightmares, but she told her children that they would go and there's like a river of teeth. And I'm like, no, we cannot.
Yeah.
There's not. Like, imagine that in a picture book, a river of teeth. The children will all have nightmares.
Yeah. No, I am not
So
touching that river. No.
right? Exactly. So we turned it into gold glitter and sparkles and obviously all these
Just the
magical
magical. Yeah. A little
exactly, the
magical
magic dust.
stream.
So
Yes.
it was a lot of fun. And I think this one too is one where we're kind of tapping into it's for the boys, it's for the girls too, but it's the boys and the tooth fair he is actually a boy and he's called the fair he and there's this whole bit about how kids do everything too fast. They talk too fast. They, do everything too fast. And the word the whole time has been fair he. but we always brushed it up and now it's fairy. So he's trying to tell him that we've always been fair he's. You guys just changed the word. So it's been fun, and I like tapping into the older kid genre, and it's hard because I have realized that middle grade is difficult. Picture books are easy in that the parents and the teachers and the grandparents are buying the books, but now when kids are expected to read for themselves and read for fun, they're not, right? So that's like where then the literacy issues come into play. And it's like, trying to promote, hey, parents, you pushed picture books and this love of books so much. And then what happened? It's like, well, my kids are into Roblox and Minecraft and Fortnite now. So I'm going to get them that stuff. And it's like, so now I'm learning this push pull of middle grade books compared to picture books. And it's definitely a new beast, but it's a fun one.
I was going to say, I'm sure there's a lot of things that were intimidating and kind of overwhelming, just, jumping into that new genre, but I didn't think about it like that. So also want to share a couple other books real quick. The first is a pair called Girls Like Me, and it's a companion, Boys Like Me by Valerie Thompkins. And I love that kids just gravitate towards these characters because they can see themselves in them and they learn to dream big and be whatever they want to be when they grow up. I'm also a huge fan of any kind of career discussions with kids because the options are just so limitless, yet many get to high school or graduate with no clue of, half the stuff that's out there, or think something might be out of reach for them. So anything that's STEM and career kind of related, I love that for all kids. And also Tristan Towns is another author, and her sister Lacey Howard have some awesome books out. One being I Am Me, which displays a plethora of characters and encourages kids to really embrace their identity, background, and their future. And that exposure also helps to demystify differences around them too. So I love that.
We love all of those books. Actually, I still need to check out Boys Like Me, but Girls Like Me and all of the Townsend sister books, we love all of those books.
Yeah, they're so good. Okay, so before we go, let's take a minute to share our hashtag mom win or author win of the week, because none of us are perfect parents. So let's celebrate what went right. So do you have something to share, a win in your realm this week or recently?
Sure. So can I share two? I'll share a mom win and an author win.
Yes.
Okay. So my mom win is that I successfully made it through washing my daughter's hair on Sundays, so much so that she fell asleep. And then it made it way easier to actually do her hair because she wasn't crying the whole time. So that was actually a big win for me because she's never done that before.
That sounds so nice.
It was nice. I was like, this is
for her. Yeah. For someone just sit there and like scrub your scalp until you fall asleep. Yes. Sign me up.
I was like, let's trade places now. Let's trade.
Yeah.
So that was my mom win, but then my author win is that just today I unboxed two new books that we have coming out at Books and Things Publishing. And we just got the box design for our 5 mini books box set.
Oh, wow.
Those pre-orders went on sale today. And then the other 2 for the author copies I got will go on pre-order next week. So that's been good. And then I say author, that's publisher high, I guess, because I don't write any of these.
No, but that is a big deal to have so many books going on at one time. So congrats to you. Woo.
Thank you.
Okay, Danielle, this has been so fun. Again, thank you again so much for joining us. You guys do not want to miss out on all the fun she's having on her socials. So do you want to share your accounts real quick so people can check those out as well?
Yeah, for sure. So follow me on Instagram at Danielle Marietta Books. And then you can follow my publishing page, which is Books and Things Pub, both on Instagram, and the same thing on TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok's where it's at, huh? We have a little bit more fun on TikTok.
Can be a little loosey-goosey over there.
I'll have all those linked in the show notes too. So, okay, I think that's it for this week's episode. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you guys for listening. I hope you've gained a couple of helpful nuggets for encouraging your kids or students to not only embrace, but celebrate diversity. And we'll see you guys next time on the Blooming Books podcast. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Blooming Books podcast, recorded and produced by Blooming Rose Kids. We've opted to keep our series ad-free, and if you'd like to support our efforts, please consider shopping our own custom-signed Blooming Rose books at bloomingrosekids.com. and our academic materials on our Teachers Pay Teachers page. All of the books mentioned in this episode are also available via our affiliate links in the show notes. We so appreciate you being here and hope to see you next time.